So you can triple your income with this first deal. So whatever your income is right now, I want you to imagine that this time next year, by the end of 2025, it's triple that number because of the acquisition that you're going to do. So here is a practical part of the day where you're going to need your pads and your pens because we're going to work out a strategy for you. This is going to be your strategy for your business, and it's going to be slightly different for each of you. So I'm going to give you some options, and you can work out which way to do this. So remember that you are one deal away from everything that you could possibly want. It's not years away, it's 6 months to 12 months away. That will get you everything that you possibly want as long as you buy the right business in the right way. So the wrong business is one that just doesn't fit in with the strategy. You bought it because you could. The wrong way is you overpay for the business. Anyone ever worried about overpaying and not getting the deal right? Because that's a big concern for people, not structuring it correctly. Or if you find yourself saying these words in your head, if I just put a little bit of money into it, I'll get the deal over the line. That is so dangerous. So as soon as you start thinking like that, you start thinking you need to put money into the deal to get the deal done. No, that you should not do that deal or you renegotiate the deal. I won't let you put your own money in. So you can triple your income with this first deal. So whatever your income is right now, I want you to imagine that this time next year, by the end of 2025, it's triple that number because of the acquisition that you're going to do. But remember, right deal in the right way. And you can double the size of your business, as we said. Now, I'm going to give you some different business acquisition approaches and models. Now, some of these will be very appropriate for you, and some of them you might think, I don't see how that's going to work for me, which is absolutely fine. So you only need one. So the rule of 6 is an approach that you might take if you are thinking outside of your sector or thinking related sectors to what you do now. Let me explain. The rule of 6 is where over the next 2 years, you buy 6 cash flowing businesses. Now, these could be businesses related to what you do, or they could be things that are very different. So it could be, for example, I'll give you an example of a client who's got a telecommunications business. He's built up this 5 million revenue telecommunications business by buying other people's businesses, and he's just bought a bowling alley. You might, why would he buy a bowling alley? Because he could buy a bowling alley. It didn't cost him any of his own money, and he thought it was going to be kind of fun because he could take the staff from his telecommunications business to the bowling alley, and why not own a bowling alley? Now, in fact, John's a great example because a few years ago, he bought a golf course. And that was actually just a few weeks prior to the very first COVID lockdown. So in hindsight, it wasn't the smartest move, but at the time, it seemed like a really good idea. But you now have the freedom when you know how to buy a business and how to do these deals of buying any sort of business. So you could carry on with your existing business, and as a sideline, you could start buying different sorts of businesses. So let's say over the next 2 years, 3 next year, 3 the year after, you buy 6 businesses. And then after that, every year you sell one. So you decide to sell your bowling alley. Don't forget, you didn't put any of your own money into the deal. And you sell that for, let's nice round number, £1 million. And let's say there's a bit of debt in the business. So after you paid all your taxes, you come out with 600,000. That's okay. So you've got 5 businesses now. So what you do, you go and buy another one. So now you've got back to 6, but at the same time, you're selling another one. So that means that every 12-month period, you will have what we call a capital event or a liquidity event. In other words, a big dollop of cash arrives in your bank account. Now, that is a business model that if you did that, you'd be in the top 0.00001% of businesses in the UK or business people in the UK because you're doing something that thinks outside the box. Everyone else goes to work every day, sits behind the desk. Okay? Now, I get that because I've done that and I know how hard it is. I can't do that anymore. I feel like I'm too old to sit behind a desk and do that anymore. I haven't had an office for years now. So why don't you say, I'm going to be not just someone growing my existing business by acquisition, I'm going to be an acquisition entrepreneur, and I'm going to spot opportunities, buy businesses, let other people run them, and then every year I'll sell one and I'll buy another one to replace it. Now that is the best retirement plan I could possibly think of. You won't want to stop working because it'll be fun. Go out and meet some people, do some deals, buy a business, and we sell one at the same time. So every year replace. Like I said, a bulletproof retirement plan. Now, for many people, maybe I've told you this a little too early today, but for many people, that is a light bulb moment of opportunity where you start thinking beyond your business. Take your knowledge, take your skills, take your experience and apply it to other businesses. If you want to find out how to buy a business successfully, get your free business buying toolkit. The link is in the video description below. Now, of course, you can buy a competitor. So you can expand your domination of your area. You can expand into other areas. So competitor is an obvious choice. Part of your supply chain. So you might go and buy part of your supply chain. So a couple of examples, the hotel owner who buys a commercial laundry because they're spending a fortune on laundry, and the art dealer who buys an art shipping service because they're spending a fortune on shipping. So what you think about here is, what do you spend a lot of money on? And would it not make your existing business more profitable to go and buy the business that does the thing that you spend a lot of money on? Not necessarily the business that you currently spend a lot of money on, but just a business that does that sort of thing. So you start to own your supply chain. This also gives you far more control over potential rising costs. I always say to people, buy a business in a sector that you understand because it makes sense to do it. However, it does limit you because it's just what you understand. But why don't you also think about buying a business in a new sector? So understand that every acquisition is 80% the same. I'll teach you how to buy a business, and then 80% of that is going to be identical for every business that you buy, and 20% is going to be different according to that sector and that type of business. Now, I like buying businesses with a management team who can run it for me, because there's no way I'm going to run it. I would be the worst person to run a business. It would be a disaster if I ran it. I am a terrible, terrible, terrible business operator. I hire people that I like rather than people who can do the job. Anyone ever done that? You hire them because you like them, but it turns out they can't actually do the job very well. And then it's really hard to get rid of them because you like them. Now, there's a great strategy that about 70, depending on which year it is, but about 70% of my mastermind clients do. It's called a buy and build. And later I'm going to give you some numbers. I won't give you too many numbers too early, but I'll give you some numbers later on how to do this. This is where you identify multiple businesses that you could buy. You acquire them and you integrate them. You create value as a result of the integration, and you therefore have a larger, more profitable business that you can sell. So let me give you an example. So let's say solar, you go and buy multiple solar businesses that individually have a value that sits here. When you get to a certain level of profitability, your value on an exit goes up. So you might buy a smaller business at, let's say, 3 times their profit. But when you have a larger business at a higher level of profit, that could be worth 8, 9, 10 times. In some sectors, with a fair wind, you're going above 10. So the advantage to you is you're rolling up in a sector, smaller businesses, maybe retiring owners, unloved businesses. You're combining them. Now, there are challenges with this. It's not as easy as it sounds, but you combine them, and as a result of combining, you've got the larger business you can sell to someone else for more money. So that buy and build roll-up strategy, we'll go into that in more detail a little bit later on, but that's a really good strategy for you to use. We talked about the prop co-opco, so property and operating. Buy businesses that own property. Businesses give you the short-term cash flow. Property gives you the long-term capital growth. So the property aspect is important. If you find a business that has property, that owns its own real estate, if I was you, and if I was advising you, I would say, let's get the real estate as well, because I'd prefer that you paid rent into your pension than pay rent to someone else. It makes a lot more sense to do that. And as a long-term strategy, you'll thank me one day. And I can tell you that owning real estate and having a real estate portfolio can get you out of trouble. If you ever need help in the future, you can refinance it. You can always sell something. So the real estate strategy is very, very important indeed. I don't think you should ever buy a franchise. I don't know how many franchises there are in your sectors, but you should never buy a franchise because you've got no control over the pricing. You've got no control over the brand, the trading geography. Don't buy a franchise. You never want to do that. I don't think you should buy distressed businesses. So distressed businesses are businesses that are in trouble. Now, there's a caveat to this. There is an exception. So a distressed business is one that's on a knife edge. It's losing money. It could be about to go bust. It has lots of skeletons. It obviously has creditors. there's a whole lot of challenges there. Now, this isn't part of what I normally talk about, but I think it's worth mentioning. There can be opportunities in those distressed businesses, but you've got to buy them in the right way. So you buy the assets rather than the shares. You buy it via pre-pack admin so that you don't inherit any of the debt, but it doesn't come back to haunt you later. You've got to do that properly. But the opportunity there is you can buy massively undervalued businesses. So they can be businesses that are fundamentally good, but they took out a huge T-bills loan during COVID, and now they can't pay it back. Or they built up a huge HMRC liability, and HMRC is knocking on the door. Not a pleasant experience for anyone. So there is an opportunity for you to acquire that, but not have any of the bad stuff that goes with it. So just the downside of buying a business that's distressed, you might just pay £1 for it, but if you pay £1 and you buy the shares, you're going to have lots of sleepless nights. You might have to put cash into the business as well, and there's no sort of handover. You basically get what you've got.